I know this because my neighbor Theodore told me. The way Theodore told me everything, leaning on the fence with his coffee, voice low, shaking his head slightly. The specific posture of a man watching a situation develop that he already knows the ending of. 40 kids, catered food, a DJ someone had booked, a party planned in full detail for a pool that Marcus had never owned, never maintained, never paid a single dollar toward, and had, in the presence of 3 witnesses, told his entire friend group belonged to him. The pump ran all Thursday night. By 7 Friday morning, 40,000 gallons were gone. Marcus came over at 9, knocked on my door with the confidence of someone who had not yet received the information that was about to change his afternoon. I showed him the empty basin from the back porch. He stood there for a long moment, looking at the bare concrete, the dry fittings, the pump disconnected and staged beside the filter housing. Then he looked at me. I looked back. What he said next, and what I said after that, and what his mother Corinne did when she found out, that became the most expensive pool party in the history of Clearwater Ridge HOA. Not because of what the party cost, because of what Corinne did trying to save it. My name is Nathaniel Crew, 49 years old, 14 years as a licensed mechanical engineer specializing in fluid systems and hydraulic infrastructure. After that, 11 more running my own engineering consultancy. I understand how systems work, how pressure builds, where the weak points are, and what happens when someone misapplies force to a structure that was never theirs to stress. My wife Simone is a forensic accountant. She spent 16 years doing financial investigations for a regional accounting firm before going independent. She examines numbers the way a geologist examines rock, patiently, systematically, looking for the fracture lines that tell you what actually happened beneath the surface. We had bought our home in Clearwater Ridge 5 years ago. A 4-bedroom craftsman on a generous lot in an HOA outside Charlotte, North Carolina. 68 homes, established landscaping, the kind of neighborhood where people stayed long enough that the trees they planted in the front yard had grown into actual shade. Our pool had been installed in year 2. Permitted, engineered by my own hand, equipped to a standard that reflected 25 years of professional understanding of fluid systems. The chemistry was perfect. The equipment was premium. The deck was Brazilian Ipe hardwood that Simone had specified because she had done the 30-year cost analysis, and it was the correct choice. It was the best pool in Clearwater Ridge by any objective measure. I knew this not because I was prideful about it, but because I had designed it and I understood what I had built. Corinne Whitfield Marsh lived 4 houses down. She was 52, former insurance adjuster, now what she described as a community wellness advocate, which appeared to mean she organized things, inserted herself into situations, and had developed over time a specific talent for making other people's property feel like shared resources without ever asking whether that was agreeable to the people who owned them. Her son Marcus was 17. He was not a bad person. He was a 17-year-old boy who had been raised in an environment where the word no was treated as a starting position rather than an answer, and who had, over 3 years of proximity to our pool, developed an understanding of it that was not grounded in anything resembling reality. The first time Marcus used the pool without permission, he was 14. I had come home from a job site to find him and 2 friends in the water. Corinne was on our back porch in one of our chairs with a glass of something cold, her phone in her lap, watching them the way you watch children in a pool you are responsible for. I stood at the porch door. Corinne looked up. "Oh, Nathaniel, hope you don't mind, it's so hot and Marcus just loves this pool." I minded. I said so, directly and without hostility. I asked her to please not bring Marcus over without asking first. She apologized in the way people apologize when they have already decided the apology covers the next time as well. I began the documentation that evening. Not because I believed one incident required a log, but because I had spent 14 years in mechanical engineering and knew that the first sign of a system problem is rarely the last one. A notebook, dated, sequential. The incident, the conversation, the outcome. Written that night. Over the following 3 years, I made 31 more entries. The pattern was consistent. Marcus would appear, sometimes alone, sometimes with friends, occasionally with Corinne herself. Sometimes they knocked. More often they did not. The pool gate had a standard residential latch that Marcus had learned to open by 11 months into the pattern. I replaced it with a combination lock. He watched me set it once, from across the yard, and apparently had sufficient observational memory to use that information, because 3 weeks later the lock was open and he was in the water. I installed a keyed deadbolt. This held for 4 months. Then I came home one afternoon to find the gate standing open, the lock intact, and 3 teenage boys in the pool. Marcus had apparently gone over the fence. I upgraded the fence section adjacent to the gate, added 12 inches of height. This produced 6 weeks of no incidents, then a new approach, coming through the back of the property along the drainage easement where the fence ended at the property line. Each escalation on my part was met with a creative solution on Marcus's part, not from malice, but from the specific determination of a teenager who had been implicitly told, by his mother's behavior and her complete failure to impose any consequence, that the pool was available if you were willing to figure out the access. I sent Corinne the first certified letter at the 18-month mark, documented 16 incidents, stated clearly that continued unauthorized access constituted trespass under North Carolina General Statute 14-15913, that I had camera evidence for 12 of the 16 incidents, and that further entries onto my property would be reported to law enforcement. Corinne appeared at my door 2 days after signing for it. She stood on my porch and delivered a speech about neighborhood community and how Marcus had always felt welcome here, and how she hoped a letter had not been necessary, and how she would certainly speak to him. She spoke to him. The pool usage continued, shifted slightly in character, less frequent, more careful about timing. Entry 19 was Marcus and 4 friends on a Thursday afternoon when both Simone and I were at work. Entry 23 was a Saturday morning, Marcus alone, 6:15 a.m., before we were awake, apparently confident that early timing reduced detection probability. Simone reviewed the log at the 2-year mark. She sat at the kitchen table with her forensic accountant's methodology, treating it the way she treated financial records, looking for patterns, timelines, behavioral signatures. "He's not random," she said. "He's strategic. He's learned your schedule." "Yes. He knows when you're on site visits. Corinne probably knows your calendar generally. We've been neighbors for 3 years. She's had opportunities to observe." Simone set the notebook down. "She's never imposed a real consequence." "No. Because in her framework, the pool is available. She's built a reality where Marcus's access is a given, and your objections are friction to be managed." "Yes. And Marcus has internalized that framework completely. He's 17. He's been living in that framework for 3 years." Simone was quiet for a moment. "What's he telling people?" I had been wondering the same thing. Entry 27 gave me the first indication. A friend of Marcus's, a boy I didn't know, who had not been a previous visitor, appeared in the pool on a Sunday afternoon with Marcus. When I walked outside and asked them to leave, the friend looked genuinely confused. He said Marcus had told him his family used the pool all the time. His family. Marcus had told his friend it was his family's pool. I added that to the log with a separate notation. Not just unauthorized access anymore. Active misrepresentation. Entry 31, the one that closed the log and started the sequence, happened on a Tuesday evening. I was in my home office. The rear camera triggered. I looked at my phone. Marcus was in the pool. With him were 6 other teenagers I did not recognize. And Karen was on my back porch, in our furniture, on her phone, with, from the look of the cooler beside her chair, refreshments she had brought from her house. I watched the camera for 90 seconds. Karen was entirely relaxed. She was not behaving like someone who had brought children to a neighbor's pool without asking. She was behaving like someone who had brought children to a pool she had reasonable expectations of using. I went outside. Karen looked up. "Oh, Nathaniel, sorry, we should have texted." "Karen," I said, "who are these children?" "Just some of Marcus's friends from school. They're good kids." "How many times have I asked you not to do this?" I know, I just thought." "How many certified letters have I sent you?" A pause. "I hear you, it's just. Get them out of the pool, now, all of them." She got them out. She was apologetic in the way that had become familiar, specific, and apparently sincere in the moment, and structurally meaningless because it produced no behavioral change. They left. I stood on the deck looking at the disturbed water, the displaced chairs, the cooler Karen had forgotten to take, which was sitting beside my outdoor table. I went inside, sat at the kitchen table, looked at the incident log. 31 entries, 3 years, 2 certified letters, multiple security upgrades all circumvented, and Karen in my furniture with an unlabeled cooler, watching teenagers swim in my pool the way someone watches children in a pool they have some reasonable claim to. I looked at the cooler for a long time. Then I called Theodore. Theodore Osai was my next-door neighbor on the east side. 61 years old, retired high school principal, had lived in his house for 14 years. He had witnessed 4 of the 31 incidents from his yard. He was the kind of neighbor who told you what he saw because he believed you should have accurate information. "Theodore," I said, "what do you hear about Marcus's pool plans?" Theodore was quiet for a moment. "You haven't heard." "Heard what?" "He's been telling people at school that he's throwing a pool party. End of semester. 40 kids, catered DJ." A pause. "He's been telling people his family has a pool." I looked out the kitchen window at the pool. Still and blue in the evening light. 40,000 gallons of water I had designed, installed, and maintained for 3 years. "His family," I said. "That's what he's been saying. I heard it from Patricia Hale's daughter who goes to the same school. She told her mother told me." Another pause. "Nathaniel, when's the party?" "I don't know yet." "I'll find out," Theodore said. He called back the next morning. "Saturday, 4 weeks away." I sat with that information for a moment. Then I called Simone at her office. "Saturday the 14th, I said. 40 kids, catered, DJ." A silence on the line. Then he sent invitations. "Tuesday, apparently." Theodore confirmed it. Another silence. Longer. "He sent invitations to a party at a pool he doesn't own." "Yes." "In front of 40 people worth of witnesses." "Yes." Simone was quiet for a long time. I could hear her thinking, the specific quality of a forensic accountant processing information. "Nathaniel." "Yes." "Drain the pool." I had already been thinking it, before the party. "Well before the party," she said. "Far enough ahead that the concrete is dry and the equipment is staged and there is no question that this is a decision, not a malfunction." "Thursday," I said. "I'll schedule the drain for Thursday. Document everything. The invitation confirmation, the witness accounts, the timeline." "I'm already writing it down." She paused. "What are you going to do about Karen?" "Nothing in advance," I said. "She'll find out when Marcus does." "And when Marcus finds out?" I looked at the pool through the kitchen window. The afternoon light was hitting it at an angle that made the water look especially clear. "He'll knock on my door," I said, "and I'll be ready." I spent the next 2 weeks building the documentation infrastructure the way I always built things, with engineering precision and zero shortcuts. Theodore provided a written account of what he had heard and from whom. Patricia Hale provided a brief written confirmation that her daughter had been told about the party by Marcus directly, with specific reference to his pool. I obtained, through Patricia's daughter, a screenshot of the group chat where Marcus had sent the details: time, date, address, pool party, bring towels. The address was mine. He had sent 40 invitations to a party at my address for my pool. I added the screenshot to the folder behind the incident log. 31 entries of unauthorized use, plus 40 invitations to an unauthorized event, plus 3 years of misrepresentation. I reviewed the CC and RS for the 40th time. No provision restricting a homeowner's decision to drain or decommission a pool. The HOA's authority extended to what you built, not to how you chose to use or not use what you had built. I pulled the North Carolina Residential Code on pool decommissioning. Drain and cover, per code specification. Fully compliant. I had the equipment and the expertise to do it myself, but I called a licensed pool service company anyway, because licensed documentation is cleaner than personal action. I scheduled the drain for Thursday morning. Sent written notice to the HOA board on Wednesday. A brief, formal letter to the board president, a retired physician named Dr. Harold Osai, who was no relation to Theodore and had the measured, careful temperament of someone who had spent decades making decisions under pressure. I informed him that I would be draining my residential pool Thursday for maintenance and inspection purposes, and that the basin would be covered per code. No request for permission, notification only. I did not notify Corinne. I had sent her 2 certified letters over 3 years. I had spoken to her at her door, in my backyard, on my porch. I had watched her sit in my furniture and supervise unauthorized swimming, and carry a cooler onto my property and apologize afterward with the specific quality of someone who did not intend to change. She had received sufficient notice over 3 years. What she had not received was a physical consequence. Thursday morning, the pool service crew arrived at 8. I had coffee ready, the pump connected, the water began moving. I stood on my back porch with my mug and watched 40,000 gallons start their measured departure. Theodore appeared over his fence at 8:30, looked at the pump, looked at me, nodded once, went back inside. By 2 in the afternoon, the basin was empty. Clean concrete, pale and bare, the equipment staged for the safety cover installation. The service crew covered it efficiently, taut, properly anchored, professional. They were packed up and gone by 3:30. I stood at the edge and looked at it. The empty basin was oddly peaceful. Just geometry, just concrete, just the absence of something that had been treated as someone else's for 3 years. I went inside, made dinner, watched something forgettable on television with Simone, who had come home at 6 and had stood at the back door looking at the covered basin for about 15 seconds before coming inside without comment. "How does it feel?" she said over dinner. "Correct," I said. Friday morning, 9:03. The knock at the front door had the specific quality of someone who has been preparing what they are going to say, and has arrived at the door before their preparation was fully complete. I opened it. Marcus stood on my porch. He was tall, 17, with Corinne's look around the eyes and a jaw that was still deciding what it was going to be. He was wearing a t-shirt from a band I didn't recognize and the expression of a person who had expected to find something and had instead found something else entirely. "Mr. Crew," he said, "the pool is empty," I said. "Yes." He looked past me toward the back of the house as if he could see through walls. "What happened to it?" "I drained it." "Why?" I looked at him for a moment. He was 17. He had grown up in a household where the story of the pool had been, for 3 years, that it was accessible, that Corinne managed the access, that Nathaniel's objections were friction. He had lived inside that story long enough that he had built an event on top of it. "Marcus," I said, How many people did you invite to a pool party here on Saturday? He went very still. I have the group chat screenshot, I said. 40 invitations, my address, my pool. He opened his mouth, closed it. I have 31 documented incidents of unauthorized access to this pool over 3 years, I said. I have 2 certified letters your mother signed for. I have camera footage. And I have 40 invitations your friends received for an event at my property that you never had permission to host. He was quiet for a long time, the specific quiet of a 17-year-old encountering the full weight of a situation he had not believed would have a full weight. I thought, he started. I know what you thought, I said. Your mother has been bringing you here for 3 years and telling you, through her behavior if not her words, that this was available. I understand why you believed it, but it was never true, and I have 3 years of documentation proving it was never true. He looked at his shoes, then up at me. What do I tell everyone? That the party is canceled, I said, and that it was at a pool you don't own. His jaw tightened. 17 years old with his pride and his canceled party and 40 texts he was going to have to send. My mom is going too. Your mother is going to have to deal with the same information you're dealing with, I said. I'd recommend you talk to her before she comes here. He left, walked down my porch steps with the specific gait of a person carrying something heavy they did not know how to set down. Corinne arrived at 11:40. She did not knock with the same quality Marcus had knocked. She knocked with the quality of someone who has been building a response for 2 hours and has arrived at the door ready to deliver it. I opened it. She was in workout clothes, the Patagonia vest she wore when she wanted to look like she was speaking from a position of reasonable authority, her phone in one hand. Her expression was the specific expression of a person who has decided that the best defense is an immediate offense. Nathaniel, she said, what you've done to Marcus is cruel. I waited. He has 40 kids expecting a party tomorrow. He's been planning this for weeks, and you drained the pool without a word to either of us. Corinne, I said, I've been saying words to you for 3 years. I said them at your door. I put them in certified letters that you signed for. I said them in my backyard when you were sitting in my furniture watching teenagers swim in my pool. This is different. It is different, I said. It's the physical consequence of 3 years of ignored words. He's 17. Yes, which is why I spoke to him this morning with the same directness I'm speaking to you. He's old enough to understand that 40 people received invitations to a party at a pool that was never his. Her expression shifted. The offense posture gave way slightly to something else, something that looked like a person recalculating how much of this she had known and how much she had allowed herself not to know. I didn't tell him to send those invitations. No, but you spent 3 years telling him, through every action you took, that this pool was accessible to him. He drew the natural conclusion. She was quiet. Corinne, I have 31 documented incidents, 2 certified letters, camera footage, and a screenshot of 40 invitations to my address. I paused. The pool is empty. It will stay empty for as long as I decide it should stay empty. That is my right as the person who owns it. She looked at me for a long moment. The expression had moved through offense and recalculation and had arrived somewhere that was harder to characterize. Not remorse exactly. More like a person standing at the edge of a situation they had been building for 3 years, finally seeing its full dimensions. What would it take, she said, for you to refill it? A direct conversation, I said, without narrative management, about what actually happened over 3 years, what your role in it was, and what changes going forward. She looked at her phone, then at me. Not today. Whenever you're ready, I said. She left. Simone was in the kitchen when I closed the door. She had heard most of it from the hallway. She looked at me with the specific expression she used when a financial investigation had reached the point where the numbers stopped being numbers and became something more human. She asked what it would take, Simone said. Yes. She's not done yet. No, she's going to try the HOA first. Why? Because she needs a structure to operate in. She spent 3 years operating in a structure where the pool was accessible. She's going to look for a new structure before she accepts that there isn't one. Simone considered this. How long? 1 week, I said, maybe 2. It was 9 days. The HOA meeting was called on a Thursday, 8 days after the drain. Corinne had submitted a formal member petition citing what she described as deliberate disruption of community harmony and requesting the board address the matter. Dr. Harold Osai forwarded me a copy per the CC and RS notification requirement and called me the same afternoon. Nathaniel, he said, I've read the petition. I've also read the incident log you sent me previously. And I want to run this meeting correctly. I want the full record in front of the board before Corinne speaks a word. I'll prepare a complete binder. Good, one more thing, he paused. I heard about the party invitations. From Theodore. From 3 separate people who have children at the same school. Marcus apparently told several classmates the pool had been, and this was the word used, taken from him. Another pause. The phrase he used was his family's pool. I wrote that down, added it to the documentation folder. I'll be ready Thursday, I said. The meeting drew 39 homeowners, the highest attendance in Clearwater Ridge's recorded HOA history, according to Dr. Osai, who had checked. Corinne had made calls. She had framed something to enough people that the community room was nearly full. She sat at the front with 2 neighbors, a woman named Deborah Ames, who had 3 children and had apparently been sympathetic to Corinne's version, and a man named Victor Park, who lived 2 streets over and had no direct connection to any of this, but had apparently been told something that made him feel the situation warranted his presence. Marcus was not there. I did not know whether this was Corinne's choice or his. Dr. Osai opened formally, parliamentary procedure, minutes documented, proper order. Then Corinne had the floor. She spoke for 16 minutes. She was organized in the specific way of someone who had spent a career adjusting insurance claims. She understood documentation. She understood narrative. And she understood how to present a version of events that was technically accurate in its facts while being structurally misleading in its sequence. She described a neighborhood pool that had been informally accessible to community children for 3 years. She described her son's canceled party as a consequence imposed without warning on a 17-year-old who had done nothing wrong. She used the phrase community well-being 4 times. She said the pool drain had been a calculated act of humiliation, designed to damage her family's standing in the neighborhood. She did not mention the 31 incidents. She did not mention the certified letters. She did not mention sitting in my furniture with a cooler. She did not mention 40 invitations sent to a party at a pool her son did not own. Dr. Osai gave me the floor. I opened with the property documentation. Pool on private property, permits in my name, maintained entirely at my expense. Then the CC and R analysis, no provision creating shared access, no provision requiring maintenance, no provision restricting drainage. Then the incident log. I read 22 entries aloud, slowly, with dates, with camera reference numbers. I read entry 19, Marcus and 4 friends on a Thursday while Simone and I were at work. I read entry 23, Marcus alone at 6:15 in the morning. I read entry 31, Corinne on my porch with a cooler. The room was quiet by entry 14. By entry 22, it had the specific quality of a space where one version of a story has been fully replaced by another. I put the certified letter receipts on the table, both with Corinne's signatures. I put the camera evidence summary beside them. Then I put the group chat screenshot on the table. Printed, enlarged, clearly legible. Marcus's message, the party details, my address, 40 recipients. "I want to address something Mrs. Whitfield Marsh said," I said. "She described the pool drain as imposed without warning. I want the board to note that what was imposed without warning on 40 teenagers and their families was a party invitation to an event at a location the host had no right to use." I paused. "I did not cancel Marcus's party. Marcus canceled Marcus's party when he sent invitations to a pool that was never his." The room absorbed this. Deborah Ames, in the front row, had stopped nodding somewhere around entry 17. Victor Park was looking at the screenshot with the expression of a man who had come to this meeting with a position and was revising it. Dr. Oz, I asked Corinne directly whether she had received the first certified letter. Yes. The second, yes. Whether the pool's private status had ever been unclear. A long pause, then. Carefully, she had understood it was Nathaniel's pool, but had believed over time that informal access had been established. Dr. Oz asked what she understood informal access to mean in the context of a private property, with documented trespass incidents, and 2 certified letters explicitly stating the opposite. Corinne did not have a clean answer to this question. Dr. Osai called the vote. No action against the drain. No action against any aspect of my management of my private property. 5-0. Corinne had no ally on the board. She had assumed she would have at least one. The unanimous vote landed in the room with the specific weight of a complete absence of ambiguity. Dr. Osai closed the meeting. In the parking lot, Deborah Ames found me before I reached my car. She said she had been told by Corinne that Nathaniel and Simone had always been welcoming of Marcus at the pool and had recently become hostile for reasons that were unclear. She said she had not known about the incident log or the certified letters. I told her I understood. That was the version available to her. Theodore was waiting by my car. He had attended and said nothing throughout, which was exactly the right thing. "How do you feel?" he said. "Like a man who documented something for 3 years and was right to do it." Corinne looked. "Like someone who built a reality and watched it disassemble in real time," I said. "Yes." Theodore nodded. "Marcus texted 40 kids that the party was at a pool he didn't own." "Yes." "That travels," Theodore said. "In a high school, that travels fast and far." I had thought about this, about Marcus, who was not a bad person, who had been handed a framework by his mother and had lived inside it until it collapsed publicly and expensively. "I know." "Do you feel bad about that part?" I considered the question honestly. I feel bad that he's 17 and embarrassed. I don't feel bad about the consequence. He misrepresented my property to 40 people. That has a cost. Theodore nodded slowly. "Fair." Patrick Whitfield, Corinne's husband, who had been invisible throughout the entire 3-year period, whose name appeared nowhere in my incident log because he had never appeared in my backyard, was standing by his car at the far edge of the lot. He looked up when I passed. He was a quiet man. Logistics director for a distribution company, traveled 3 weeks of 4, had the particular detached quality of someone who comes home to a household that has been running without them and has learned not to ask too many questions about the mechanics. He said, "She didn't tell me about the letters." I stopped. "Both of them." "Either of them." He looked at his car keys. "I found out about the log tonight. She never mentioned it." "She signed for both." "I know." He was quiet for a moment. "Marcus called me after he talked to you Friday. He stopped. He was upset. I asked him what happened and he told me about the invitations and the pool, and I said, 'Where did you get the idea that pool was available?' And he said, 'Mom.'" I waited. "I'm sorry," he said, "for all of it." "I appreciate that," I said. He drove away. Simone was on the back porch when I got home. 2 glasses of wine. The Charlotte night was warm, late spring warmth that felt like permission. She handed me a glass. We sat for a moment looking at the covered pool, dark blue cover taut silent. "How was the parking lot?" she said. Patrick didn't know about the letters. Simone absorbed this. She hid them from him. "Yes," which means she knew they were significant enough to hide. "Yes." Simone sipped her wine. "When do you refill it?" "When I decide to," I said, "not before." She nodded, the specific nod of a forensic accountant who understands that timing is a form of documentation. Karen came to the door 10 days after the meeting. Alone. Without the Patagonia vest, without the phone in her hand, without the specific posture of a person managing a narrative. She stood on my porch in a way that was noticeably different from every previous time she had stood on my porch, without the prepared quality, without the offense as defense structure. She said she wanted to have the conversation I had mentioned, the direct one. We sat on my front porch. She talked for 40 minutes. Not a speech, a conversation. The first real one we had ever had. She talked about the first time she had brought Marcus over, which had been, as I suspected, a genuine assumption that it would be welcomed. She talked about how the assumption had hardened over time into something she had stopped examining. She talked about the letters, why she had not shown Patrick, why she had told herself they were Nathaniel overreacting to something that was harmless. She did not excuse herself. She explained herself, which is different. At the end, she said she was sorry, not with the automatic quality of the previous apologies, with the slower, less comfortable quality of a person who has finished examining something and found that the examination produced a conclusion they had to own. I accepted it genuinely. "The pool," she said. "I'm not asking you to refill it. I just want you to know that we won't, Marcus won't." She stopped. "We understand it's not available." "I know you do now," I said. She left. I sat on the porch for a while after. The neighborhood was quiet in the particular way of a late spring evening when the day has been long and the air has finally decided to cool. Simone came out 20 minutes later, sat in the other chair. "How was it?" she said. "Real," I said, "for the first time." She was quiet for a moment. "Are you going to refill it?" "Yes," I said, "this weekend." She turned to look at me, that quick. She said what she needed to say. "That matters." Simone considered this. "You spent 3 years building a case." "I built the case because I needed it. I don't need it anymore." The pool service company came Saturday morning. 6 hours to refill. The chemical balance took 3 days to establish. By the following Wednesday, the water was perfect, clear, properly balanced, exactly what I had designed it to be. Thursday morning, I swam laps for the first time in 4 weeks. The water was cool and clean and entirely mine. The equipment ran exactly as engineered. The deck was warm in the morning sun. I floated afterward, stared at the Carolina sky, did nothing productive, the best use of a well-built pool. Theodore appeared over the fence at some point, ostensibly checking something about his irrigation line. "Pool's back," he said. "Pool's back." He looked at it for a moment. Marcus canceled the rescheduled version too. Different venue, different pool. Apparently the story had gotten around enough that he paused. "Kids talk." "I know." "He'll be fine," Theodore said. "He's 17, they recover." "I know that too." Theodore went back to his irrigation line. I floated in the clean water in the morning light, in a pool I had built and maintained and briefly, decisively, emptied when the situation required it. The water held me up the way it always had, indifferent, physical, governed entirely by properties that had nothing to do with who thought they had a claim to it. I stayed in until my coffee on the deck edge went cold. Then I climbed out, dried off, and went inside to start the day. Everything was exactly where it was supposed to be.